Durag Wisdom here, folks, and welcome to Earth Day Y2K 18.04.30. Just 190 days until the midterms. Comey steps up. Jimmy Comey's book. Excuse me for calling him Jimmy. I feel like it. I don't know why, but there's something about James Comey that makes me want to call him. Just say, hey, Jimmy. I found myself screaming at my TV when Trump's face appeared on it last night. He was telling this crowd of scum that this nation should thank him for firing Jimmy Comey. I found myself screaming at the TV again when Meet the Press broadcasted yesterday. 3 of the guests defecated their scumbag opinions on Comey's book. The guy himself had just been interviewed by Chuck Todd. Meet the Press. One of the morons, a right-wing turd, said that Comey should not be writing about ongoing investigations and implied that he had criminal intent. Because Republicans, everybody has criminal intent except for them. And they're filled with criminal intent. Bastards. Comey checked with the FBI and the Justice Department before he published his book so that they could make the necessary suggestions for redactions. Another dickwad complained that Comey was making tons of money on his book from people who all hate Trump but seem to have forgotten what he did to Hillary Clinton. Why should Don, the traitor Trump, and his rich GOP donors be the only ones who have the right to have tons of money? If I was in Comey's place, I'd want to publish a book too. Not only to make money, but also to expose the chump creep Trump before the entire world as a dictator wannabe and a Putin-loving coward. And still another creep on Meet the Press complained that Comey should never be forgiven because he helped Trump win the election against Hillary Clinton. The bullshit on this show last night, folks, was thick and pungent. I had watched the rerun. I didn't see the morning show. I could feel and smelling that bullshit just wafting off the TV into my face, and I was going to gag and throw up. Once and for all, ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy did not help Trump win. The 50 goddess damn percent of us who stayed home election day 2016 gave Trump all the help that he needed. The most disingenuous thing pundits and their guests do is fail to remind people of this fact. Jimmy Comey had to write this book for many reasons. He had to show that our country is now in the hands of mobsters. He had to show what correct, moral, humane leadership looks like. He was the head of the FBI after all. He had to show that he despises bullies of all kinds, and most especially those who have power over others, as in the workplaces and as in organized crime. He had to show that everything he did with Hillary Clinton was painful to him, personally, but had to be done for the general public. And he found out the second time that she was innocent as well, except that she was careless, ignorant about the technology of the machines that we now use now. And you know who's even more ignorant about machines, the computers? The creep, the piece of shit that's occupying our White House right now. That piece of slime, that traitorous piece of slime. Jimmy Comey takes seriously his status as a person of the law, and as such, he must always be above reproach in his behavior. A professional law person, a professional anybody has to be above reproach. He never implies that he is a perfect being. That these pundits seem to over and over and over comes out of their shit-stained mouths. Jimmy Comey is quite harsh on himself in his book, even accusing himself of doing some bullying while he attended college. And he's always regretted it. Read it. I felt this book from the top of my spine to the bottom. This was not a partisan book. Jim Comey did not show any bias or hatred against Democrats. If anything, Democratic leaders come out looking much better than Republican leaders do. I was quite impressed by his description of Obama and of Republican former, I think, Attorney General John Ashcroft, and his description of Traitor Trump on the money. I may not agree with Jimmy's politics, but I respect his innate humanity, which comes forth sincerely in his book, whether the pundits on yesterday's Meet the Press think so or not. Comey, when he was in the Bush administration, for example, fought against VP Cheney to Dick's contention that we should have enhanced torture without notifying the general public. And John Ashcroft, who I couldn't stand, supported him, Comey, in his efforts. Do you know what Jimmy Comey was doing at the time he was fired? My brother's birthday is 9 May, and it turns out to also be the day Jimmy Comey was fired. Jimmy was in LA, the city I was raised in. He was invited to speak to and meet, as he writes, talented young lawyers, engineers, and business school graduates of color to come listen why they should take cuts in pay and become FBI agents. Throughout his book, Jimmy C. made it quite clear his feelings about the Black Lives Matter movements and the like. If there were more Jimmy Comey's in charge in law enforcement, I sincerely believe that our police forces would take on the colors of the rainbows individually. And while he was giving this speech to this group of color, it was announced over the TV about his firing by the most immoral piece of crap to ever darken our White House, by covering it in the very thing that Trump is. Crap! 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 And after Jimmy C. was fired, Traitor Trump did not even want him to fly back on the FBI plane. How was he supposed to get back? I guess he could have flown back someplace else. But Andrew McCabe, another decent individual, ignored this order from the tyrant wannabe and let the fired director ride on the plane back. Jimmy writes that this made Trump explode. I mean, he exploded and he threatened McCabe with criminal intent. Check out page 266 of his book, Comey's book, where the chump Trump insults McCabe's wife. Whether you like me saying this or not, folks, I hope each day that Trump dies. I hope he dies, either by natural causes or as a victim of an accident, either natural or human. He is a bane on our republic and he must be legally eradicated. In reading Jimmy's book, I was struck by his use of foreshadowing. When, in early parts of his book, he talks about the mafia, about bullying, about the FBI, the Justice Department, and how it should always be separate from the other branches of government, and about what good, ethical, humane leadership is and what it looks like. He is preparing us for the latter part of the book, where he must confront the apotheosis of his lifelong battle against bullies, the symbol and embodiment of everything evil in the person of Traitor Trump. Now, Comey says this whole book isn't about Trump. That's not the point. We have a dictator here who wants in charge here in our government. And this book cannot separate itself from that fact. I am quite confident that Jimmy Comey was telling the truth. And in the entire book, I never got the feeling that this person felt that he was better than me or better than anyone else. Look, I never wanted to have any children because I've learned individually what a shithole our species has made of this planet and life on it. When I read of the death of James Comey's newborn infant son, I wept. The pundits seldom talk about that incident from the book. People who decide to have children are either quite optimistic or selfishly stupid. If James Comey had been my father, rather than the damaged and sad person who was, I may have turned out quite different. I was raised by a sad bully, damaged by horrific World War II combat experiences. I believe that my father, had he lived, sadly would have voted for traitor Trump because he was suffering from malignant ignorance brought about in part by post-traumatic stress syndrome. If we are to rise above the threat our country is now dealing with, if we are to win this war for the soul of our nation, we must read, we must question, we must stay awake, we must not fear because, as FDR said, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. And we must participate in our fragile democratic republic and vote our guts out for human beings who follow many of the dictates put out, believe it or not, by former FBI Director James Comey in a book called A Higher Loyalty, Truth, Lies, and Leadership.